Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Outbound Funds community team here today. Today, hopefully you're in the right place. We're talking about portals. And so we'll just get started. If everybody doesn't mind, just introducing yourself in the chat. Just drop in your name, your title, maybe something you're interested in learning about today. And then while you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Bill Corkle. I'm with the Council of Michigan Foundations and been a longtime member of the Outbound Funds community team. Nick, I'll pass it over to you as one of my fellow co-leaders of the group.
Hey everybody, Nick Limbert, Nick Limbert here. I co-lead with Bill and a few others here, and I'm at the University of Minnesota. We're using Outbound Funds for scholarship management over here.
I'm trying to see. I think we might be the only two from our team so far on here. So yeah, thank you for those of you that are dropping this into the chat. Great to see all of your names in there and what you guys are doing. Awesome. All right. So, and again, just as a reminder, the Outbound Funds group, we've been together for, gosh, it feels like we're getting close to 10 years now, just in one form or another with creating a grants management solution for Salesforce was the general idea that got us all together originally. Obviously, many of you probably know Outbound Funds is now has now been adopted by Salesforce, and so they maintain the package and the product. But we as a community are still here and want to engage with all of you and learn from each other and share experiences about how different people are managing their grants, scholarships, other flows of money out of your organizations using Salesforce. So anyways, we're excited to talk to all of you. I know portals is always one of the big topics. Once you figure out how to track grants in Salesforce, it's like, okay, now how do we let people interface with those? So with no further ado, I will introduce our first speaker. We have Samantha Shane from the William Penn Foundation. So welcome, Samantha.
Hi, everybody. I'm seeing some familiar names in the chat and also some people who are new names and faces, and I'm that to you as well. So thank you for trusting me and for the opportunity to share what we built here at the William Penn Foundation. I always like to start these with a super short, just let's get into this. Let's give you some context about what you're about to see because you might realize that you have nothing in common with us. I mean, that's probably not true, but we're a larger scale funder. All of our funding is local to Philadelphia and a couple of surrounding counties, but don't get your hopes up if you're in those counties. And I'm not going to read this to you. You can read it to yourself. But we do have a new strategic plan, and we changed from an invite only to an anyone can apply. And that has had really dramatic impact with our portal design. We did like the nth portal redesign that we're like losing count. And we also implemented multi-factor authentication. So that's fun because anybody can log in. And now we're trying to make sure that they're the real person that they are. And that was a little tricky for us. It's not the point of today's presentation, but I'll drop a link in the chat for how we figured that out. We have two full-time Salesforce admins, which is kind of an embarrassment of riches, and I really love my team. And fun fact, we have two portals. We're only going to demo one of them today. Um, this is the first page, like that portal users see when they log in. We're in a test account, and so there's not a lot going on, but it's actually really, really cool. One of our goals for the portal, I'm thinking of you, Jessica, because you were like, I'm looking for inspo, is that we wanted this to be a place where people could come to be like, where do I stand? Like, do I owe you anything? When is my next payment? What's going on? And so we have these tables that don't have any data in them in this example, where people can see what's up beyond the transactional relationship of like, I'd like to apply for money, please, which is the next thing I'm going to show you. So because we're RFP driven, request for proposals, there has to be an open proposal type for someone to apply to. The deadline for that most recent one was April 25th, so you missed it, but it's okay. You can still start an open application. And what I wanted to tell you about this page is that this is all ScreenFlow. Like not these buttons. These buttons are actually a screenshot. Each one is a screenshot, and then we have like a little URL on top of it, like on top of the image that we like dragged into the portal. But everything else on here are screen flows. And I'm telling you that because you can do this at home. We actually built this ourselves, like me and Kaisha, who's I think not on the call at the moment. So I'm starting a new application. This is real. This is actually in production. And this is what people do. They go through all these tabs. Each tab is a screen flow. So no to fiscal sponsors. They are so complicated. We're not going to talk about that today. This is just a screen flow. For some of you, this probably looks pretty familiar because it's literally just a screen flow. And there's some like other bells and whistles in there that I'm not going to belabor. But all of these tabs just pull in different flows, and they're like different flows based on the user, the context, the RFP, the requirements. But they just, it's like a whole management process of naming conventions for dealing with all the flows. But we're really proud that this is free. Like we're not paying for a form builder. We can handle everything just using flows. So I wanted to, I know we're doing like lightning round. There's two more things that I want to share about our how we handle this. So one is that we created a really homegrown validation system. So we actually have a validation screen flow that looks to make sure that you have populated all of the required questions. You'll notice on the project tab that none of the questions are required because people don't fill out the application all in one sitting. So we don't want to prevent them from being able to save what they have and move on, which is what a Salesforce validation rule would do, or a required field inside of a flow. So instead, we made the submit button conditional, and it only shows up if you've satisfied everything that's in this flow, and then this flow gives you custom errors that tells you what you need to fill out. So that's pretty cool. There's a little bit more to it I could like show you, but I'm not going to get into it today. And then I just have one more thing I'm going to show you. I just wanted to show to put like a more technical, since this is a technical group for the most part, I just wanted to show you like if you want to use screen flows in your portal, how do you actually do that? So we're going to use this one as an example. I'm on the homepage, and this is a way of displaying data that we have stored in Salesforce and displaying it to the logged in user. So I want to show you the flow itself. So first we find out what org the user is connected to, and then this is what the screen flow looks like. So it's literally just like pulling in fields that probably are familiar to you. And then these fields over here are roll-up fields that we calculate in Salesforce, and they are updated in real time, and then we just like give them back to the user. And this is the experience builder back end of our experience site, or formerly known as our Salesforce community. This is the real thing. And then I wanted to show you like, this should look familiar because it's the same thing that you see here. This is where we dragged the flow component onto the like drag and drop builder. And then over here, I don't have my like cursor little pointy thing. Let me see if I can get that. Okay, it's not worth it. Over here is where we selected what flow we want. And then over here is where we pass in the variable based on the person who's logged into the portal. And so we take this account ID from the user and we pass that in to get the org over here. And then we populate a screen with data based on that org, and we show it to people. So that's kind of like a mini version of the kind of thinking and the kind of technical pieces that have puzzle pieced together to make our little portal, the little portal that could. So that's all I have. I'm trying to keep it really tight.
Yeah, well, thank you. That is beautiful, and I love the screen flows and the low code take on that because I think people think this is intimidating or it's impossible to show such a simple solution to do that. I love it. Are you open to taking a couple questions right now? We also have discussion at the end, so if people want to wait till they see everything, you're welcome. But if you have a top of mind question, come off mute and ask away.
I have one. So, hi, my name's Matt. It sounded like I heard you say you use conditionality to show, like, populate different flows. Does that include like sort of like at the field level? Like I'm thinking about like, do different applications might have similar buttons across the top, I guess the stepper, but then have different like sets of requirements within them. And so like how many flows? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's three primary ways that we show the right thing at the right time. So the first way is within one single flow. So just a conditional, like conditional logic being like, show this question or hide this question. Then there's like, and that is pretty limited for us. Then there's like, show this collection of questions in a tab or hide the entire tab. We handle that with audiences in Experience Builder by making pages and then making those pages show or hide. And then the last way is with something that we call we call it them router flows. Maybe someone here has an idea for a better name and I'm open to it. But basically what we do is we have one flow that rules them all that we drag into a tab, meaning like these are the main narrative application questions. And then that flow basically just has a decision element that runs subflows. And so it makes it so that we can have fewer pages and we handle which subflow the person sees based on what application they opened. And so we have a bunch of those routers, like basically every tab that you saw in our application has a router and subflows. And then there's conditions. So there's like, yeah, just to summarize, conditionality inside of a screen flow, conditionality for which flow you get, we use routers for that, and conditionality for which tabs you get, and we use Experience Builder audiences for that.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and Samantha, while you're talking, Kimberly suggested that she calls them flow controllers, which I like that term.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. All right. Well, we'll have plenty of time for questions and more discussion
Oh, I
after.
saw one question in the
Go
chat
ahead.
about
Yeah.
instructions. Yes, so we have embedded instructions on many tabs, and we also have tabs that are only instructions that are like in between the data entry tabs. And for anybody who wants to see those instructions, you could make an account for our portal and open an application, see what's in there because it's free and anybody can start one. So if you really want to like, there are some instruction text in there that I'm proud of. Doesn't necessarily mean that we don't get like hundreds of emails asking us questions, but we do try to put instruction text out there.
All right, great. Thank you.
There was one more that came in here
Oh,
about
yeah.
the template that you used. Did you use a certain Experience Cloud template, like the Aura or Lightning Web Component or Lightning Web?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I misinterpreted that question. For theme, we're using Ember. And I'm looking for we're using customer account portal. So not Visualforce and tabs, not Aura. We have a couple of Lightning Web components that we drag into certain tabs, and I didn't show those to you. not because they're proprietary, but because they're custom, and I just didn't think that would be as interesting. But if you have custom components, you could layer them in with screen flows on different tabs.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again, Samantha. I'm sure we'll have more questions at the end for you. All right, I'm going to keep us rolling. Fiona, I will pass it over to you. Fiona's going to show us the Bush Foundation's portal.
Yeah, so let me share my screen. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Share, got it. Okay. Yeah, so can everyone see my screen?
We can. And do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm
sure.
sorry. I'm Fiona Rosenthal. I work at North Peak Solutions. I report to Shari Carlson, who you probably are used to seeing on these calls. She's part of the Outbound Funds community group. I am going to be sharing with you part of the Bush Foundation portal. This is the Bush Foundation portal is also designed for multiple audiences. So they use their portal for their fellows, for their organization grantees, for their reviewers, and for their mentors. So we also use audiences so that we can present the right set of tabs and the right experience depending on the user that logs in. So right now I'm just showing you the reviewer part of the portal. The way that Bush Foundation works with their fellows is they generally get about 1,000 applications. And then they have reviewers that review about 50 applications each. So they came off of Foundation Connect. They needed a new reviewer portal, and the reviewers wanted a way to easily look through these multiple reviews in a very, very quick way because they had so many to read through. So we went with a side-by-side page layout. One side is the application that they need to review, and the other side is the resume that gets uploaded with the application. So they can actually have both on the screen at the same time and go through the review very quickly. So when they log in here, you'll see that they have the reviewer link. A couple of things to point out is we did build a reviewer dashboard. This helps them kind of keep track of all of the reviews that they've done. So you can see here, they're actually told, like at the end of their reviews, they should have a certain amount of yeses, a certain amount of nos, and a certain amount of maybes. So this kind of lets them keep track. So you can see here, this is all the yeses that they marked. These are the maybes, these are the nos. So they can see very quickly how many they've done. This is their full score distribution. And at the very bottom, how many reviews have been assigned to them to do. So they can quickly come back to this dashboard, refresh it as they're reviewing, and kind of see how the tallies are spread out. The reviews themselves, this is using Lightning Web Component. So this is not screen flows, this is custom built. Right now I only have 2 in here, but the first time they log in, they would probably have like a list of, like you saw, like 76 reviews that they need to get through. They can toggle to the reviews that they've completed. I don't have any completed reviews here right now, but you can see in this list view, like they can also see the scores that they've given the reviews that they've completed, so they can see those very quickly. And then for each review here that they're seeing, they're clicking on a button that's going to open up that review screen for them. And you can see here, this is customizable. So this is built on a Lightning Web Component, but on the back end of Salesforce, it's actually driven through custom metadata. So you can choose the sections, and then you can choose the fields that appear within the sections. So year over year for Bush Foundation, they have changed their application questions. They have changed some of the data that they want to display on the screen. And that's all declarative. So even though it's built on Lightning Web Component, how it displays, the fields that display here are declarative. So you can see here on the left-hand side, we have the applicant details. Then we have the questions. This year, they actually also added the ability for someone to upload a video for their submission instead of an essay question. So that links to the video. And then all of the information here, the reviewer can just read through on the screen. And then we built in the scoring. So they've also changed the way they do the scoring a little bit, but as they go through, they're literally just selecting yes, maybe, no's on each section, and then an overall assessment at the end. And then they can put their own personal notes. So if they're not ready to submit that review and they're just going through it and they just want to make some notes and come back later, they can make those notes, save the review, and then come back and actually finish the review at a later point in time. And then on the right-hand side here, you can see that this is the resume that goes with this application, and they can just scroll through that resume. Bush Foundation made the decision to not have this kind of like as a downloadable attachment. They didn't want the reviewers to actually be able to download these PDFs. So they're just images on the screen, but each resume that comes with the application displays next to the applicant's application information. So you can see here on this one, this is Eva Garrett. This is her resume. So they can just kind of see side by side, and they can also like collapse the information so that they can focus on the piece of the application that they're reading. I think that's, I know I also went through this very fast. Yeah, so this gave them a really fast way to kind of get through a big long list of reviews and get them done pretty efficiently, and then keep track of the scoring as they do it, so they can adjust the scoring for the ones that are maybes and later come back and like redistribute them to yeses or nos. And then in the back end of Salesforce, these reviews are obviously records that are already created in the system. And then as the reviewer submits the review record in Salesforce just gets updated with the yes, maybe, no, and the status gets to application or review submitted, so that we can keep track internally of how many reviews are still out there waiting to be done and make sure like they're getting done by the deadline. Is there anything else you want me to show just on the review? I can show you the custom metadata. I'm not sure it's really going to make sense to people, but it's built. There's basically like sections and fields. So you can see here like this applicant details section in custom metadata. These are the fields that are appearing there. You do have some control over the layout, like if you want them to take up 2 column spaces on the design or 3, and what order you want them to be in. So if I decide next year I don't want to display like ethnicity subcode, I can get rid of it declaratively here. And then when I refresh the page on the review, that'll be gone. So year over year, like you can change what's going to show up on the screen. So that controls this piece of it here and so on. Yep. That's it.
That's great. Thank you, Fiona. And again, I love the different approach and using metadata this way. That's a really cool way to do it. Does anybody have any questions or want to ask anything of Fiona about the implementation?
Hey, it's Jake at United Way Central Indiana. I just was curious, what sort of component are you using to do the images of the PDFs?
That is a very good question, and it's code-based, and I will have to get back to you on the answer, because this is something a developer did for us. I know it's an image of the content file, but other than that, I don't know how it's displayed.
No worries. Thank you.
Yep.
Fiona, are the staff managing the metadata?
Right now, they come to us, like they have managed services with us, so we go in and we help them, but it's definitely something that they could do themselves. It's all declarative, so it's all field-based, and they can just choose which fields they want to go on there.
Yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
asked. Yeah, I was thinking that it's a great tool, the way you've created this architecture, very easy to hand off to Foundation to take over management of that year after year.
Yeah, we didn't want it to be dependent on a developer. So like every year they have to come back and call up a developer and say, we want a new field on here. So it's built on Lightning Web Components, but it's very flexible in a declarative way.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I am next. So let me share my screen. Okay. For those of you that don't know, Council of Michigan Foundations is not technically a foundation. We're an association for foundations in Michigan. But we do some dabble in grant making from time to time. And so we currently have a partnership with our state DNR. And so we're helping communities around the state of Michigan, along with some of our community foundation partners, help those communities in need get different Parks and Rec programs going. And so there was some special dollars available. The DNR wanted to partner with us to help target these communities and help assist them in achieving some of these, getting some of these grants. So but we had to kind of come up with a solution very quickly. So we use form assembly for a lot of forms and intake of different processes. And so rather than spin up a big experience cloud that we only need for a very small project, this is only about, less than 30 grantees that are recipients. We started playing with the idea of using form assembly. So every one of them just has a grant ID for their grant agreement. And we just decided to basically just use the form assembly workflow feature and built just a series of forms and then just used a front end form and workflow to just help them navigate. So kind of similar to Samantha's approach of using, screen flows and sending them to everything. Oh, it's going to take a second here. Usually much faster. Of course, doing a demo, it's going to be slow. But so basically we just said, what do you want to do? And so they have to submit quarterly reports for our program. And so they may also need advances for funds. I've been many of these communities just needed a quick advance for their project. And so we just needed to facilitate a couple of things. But we built this out so we could just have a modular approach to add new forms or collect new data along the process. So I'll just click on next. And then this will fill in everything. So, and then if they want to download a worksheet, we just have like a simple Excel file linked to a button, and then we have their reporting period. And then they just fill out their narrative, submit that, and it will go into our system. We collect all the data, and then our team on the back end, we get the notifications, obviously, and then we can do the review through Salesforce, look at the data. We've also connected this. We have some external parties helping, contractors and such. And so we're also using Form Assembly's new connector for Google Sheets. And so we're pumping that data over to a Google Sheet. So some of our external partners can just see like a raw Excel system or, look at that. So makes it really, really simple. I'm going to go back here. Of course. All right. Well, I'll leave it at that. But basically, you can just keep going back in and out and just fill out your advances. So it's really, really simple solution. But just for those of you that maybe aren't ready to bite off Experience Cloud, just wanted to present a way that you could use an additional tool that's something you might already have off the shelf that could give you the similar functionality to pull data, out of your records or put it back into Salesforce and update the records. So if anybody wants, I could go back and do another one, but it's pretty simple solution. The name of the game today.
Bill, for years, I'm curious if a ScreenFlow could replace what you're doing on form assembly there. After seeing what Samantha's doing, I'm now like ScreenFlow, ScreenFlow, ScreenFlow.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, yeah, you could. You just need, again, we didn't have Experience Cloud or anything, so we didn't
You
have a
don't
way.
need to.
Yeah.
You can have a public site with a screen flow
Yeah.
that is set to a guest user profile, and it's free. You can have people fill out the screen flow, and you can even have it be password protected to give yourself just a little bit more security. You would have to give people the password, but it's very cool. I just created one. I was helping a friend, and they're a org that provides legal pro bono support, and they only have one form. And so I was like, oh, we don't want to have to pay for a third-party tool. So I created an experience site, which is free, with a guest user profile, which is free, and a screen flow, which is set to system mode. So they can plug data into any field, but they can't see the data after they submit it. And it came out really cool.
See, awesome. Yeah, that's a great solution. And sorry, I might have misunderstood your question, Nick, when you said just give them a screen flow. I was like, they don't have logins. But yeah, Samantha's absolutely right. Yeah, that would be a great way. Again, if somebody just has like a single form, whether it's, a scholarship application or a quick and simple, or you've been able to consolidate all your grant applications or something like that to a single application, that would be fantastic, especially if you just need a quick intake solution. Yeah, so again, we're at the point where you're all welcome. We would invite if anybody has another take or another thing that you're doing with anything, whether we've already discussed Experience Cloud sites, another form tool or a website integration. It's open floor at this point. So we'd love to invite others to jump in and show what you have if you're willing to do that. Elizabeth, you're first to raise your hand if you'd like to jump on in.
Pick me, pick me. Hi, everyone. This is my first one of these sessions. I found out about it through the Tag Slack channel. Thank you so much for doing this. It was really helpful. We are in the midst of trying to make a portal for our partners. And one of the things that we're hoping to do, and I know this has come up on the Tag Salesforce Slack, is collect bank information. And, I think we're all fairly okay with like not doing million bells and whistles for granting access for like report submission because we don't take applications. It's just we just give out money, right? Source Family Office. We're not a foundation. But the bank information part has been a little bit sticky. And so I'm wondering if anyone else has collected bank information through a portal and what security protocols they are employing to do so. This would integrate into Intact directly, which we have like an integration to Intact on the back end. So thank you.
It's a great question, and I would agree. I've seen this pop up in a number of threads. How's this group? How are you all handling the intake of or transfer of banking information? Are you collecting it as part of your application or form process, or are you using the different process? And so Samantha, I see you nodding your head. So
Yeah.
you go first, but if others want to jump in, I'd love to hear how others are doing it.
I wrote back to that thread, I think. But I also, this process for us has a lot of moving parts and a lot of different parts of compliance and that are very like potentially vulnerable information. And so I actually just rewrote our internal documentation and I could send that to you directly for anyone who's interested. But the way we handle this is we use DocuSign as a way to collect the secured information. We could map the fields to encrypted fields in Salesforce, but we decided not to because we don't even need to see the data in Salesforce. And since this is like primarily Salesforce using, well, everyone here is using Salesforce, but everyone is using a different constellation of third-party apps. So I don't want to get too far into the DocuSign configuration, but we added a bunch of like extra security layers in DocuSign of requiring multi-factor authentication and to use the DocuSign form and requiring multiple signers with different email addresses. Somebody did try to spoof it, but it's like that is more work for them, right? And that's like the big goal when it comes to preventing fraud. So once the DocuSign form is completed, it's using a part of DocuSign that's called a web form or a power form. And that goes directly to our finance team. And then they do like a really rigorous verification process, which is mostly human. And then if the org passes, then the bank account information are manually typed into Sage Intacct. We do have automation that then like talks between Sage Intacct and Salesforce to like tell my team that the payments can be processed through ACH. So it's a little bit Rube Goldberg, but I would say the last thing I would add is that we've restricted access for who can even get to the DocuSign form. So just because you can log into the portal doesn't mean that you can get to the form. You have to have like a finance permission. We're not using like elevated profile. There's a like a profile way where you can have these like enhanced users in a community. We're not using that feature, but we make it so that like every development team member can't just fill out a new form and put their own bank account number in and be like, hey, send the money right to me. That'll be fine, right? And we have a protocol internally that we don't send that link out by email, even though I know what the link is. Because once people like if I sent the link to Bill, then like now Bill has the link and he can send it to somebody else. So we're also like considering quarterly changing the link of just like cloning the form so that it's just like you have to go to the portal to get the link to fill this thing out. And yeah, there is potential for more automation, but we want there to be human intervention to verify these numbers before they make it into any of our systems.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical piece. With just the number, I would say a lot of foundations, just from where we sit, a lot of they reach out to us when they have problems, and like the amount of people that have reached out over the years whose email has been hacked and then like inadvertently rerouted. So like the CFO's mailbox is just sending a copy of everything off to some mailbox, right, in Gmail land or whatever. Like I 100% agree with you, Samantha. Like you need to like rotate those links or have, the link only available behind some sort of, multi-factor or some very secure portal. But yeah, it's tricky one to manage. But I was curious, I was kind of watching the chat. Is anybody else collecting that via something other than DocuSign? Again, I think most people steer clear of putting that data in Salesforce, I think. So that also complicates it, right? Because we're talking Salesforce portals and how do you connect them to something secure where they transmit that?
We are collecting in Salesforce. Well, we collect via our form tool, so Form Titan. We create obfuscated links that are sent via email, but they're read only. Sorry, they're write only. There's no data already in it, and it writes to an encrypted fields on an object that almost nobody has access to, basically, and we're doing a manual sync into Intact. And then there are some automated emails that get fired whenever someone inputs that data to the contacts associated with the grant to say like, hey, your banking data has been updated, and that's like our main way of maintaining that. For us, we're in such close contact with the people. And to Samantha's point earlier, we also have a number of fiscal sponsors because we do early stage investing. So there's also some automation that sends off that banking info form to fiscal sponsors if the grantee indicates that they have one, which helps us minimize. So we've gone back and forth with Use Bill and Intact. We're only sort of connected. And I think to the same point, having some manual touch on it, but also trying to keep things in order and simplify collection. So that's our approach for now.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. The other one I keep seeing pop up, a lot of people, I think, use bill.com, I think, in a lot of cases. And so I don't know if there's anything with like you set up an account, we set up an account, and then do some linking there. Again, maybe preventing some transfer of specific banking details. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but not sure if anybody else is doing that. But I think sometimes that's also a solution. All right, Maura, you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. I also found this through the tech community. And side note before I get to my question, yeah, we also do bill.com. We have a field that I created that takes the P&I record from Bill, and there's an automatic email that if that is changed after creation, then that automatically fires off to finance to then go through our separate process of verification of what that change was and by whom. But so my question is actually for Samantha. So the screen flows super cool. We're looking at using form assembly actually at the moment, but I'm just curious on your ScreenFlow submissions. I noticed right before your submit tab, you had attachments, and just curious about if there's a limit to your attachments, and then once all that information comes in, where that's landing, especially since you're doing open call RFPs.
Awesome, thank you. I actually just deleted my test record so that it wouldn't annoy people in our dashboards, and so it'll take a second to pull it up again, but to answer your question directly, we require 6 or 7, I can't remember how many files. They have to, they're things like their 990, their org budget, their this, their that, and they can add supplemental ones as well. And we've gone through a lot of iterations of how to handle this. For anyone who remembers or ever used Foundation Connect, they had a very different way of handling this. What we're doing now is we have one standard component for file upload. We don't do verification for in terms of being like, is this really a budget? It's just like you dragged and dropped this. It could be a picture of your dog, but we're gonna take it. And all of the files, they're stored in files in the standard Salesforce feature. They remain in a collaborative place where grantees can still access those same files in the portal, and so can our staff internally. And then we have another place where we store internal only files. So we end up kind of having files in 2 different places. One is the ones that are shared with grant seekers or grantees. And I was recently at a conference where I learned about a security app that checks sales files or documents uploaded to Salesforce files for like viruses or malware. And I'm curious about that because we have a lot of that kind of stuff on our emails for scanning attachments. Meanwhile, we're taking in way more attachments through our portal. And we don't have any way to make sure that they're safe, although we assume goodwill. But grantees might not know if they have a compromised file either. So we might add an extra layer of security to that.
Oh yeah, if you can find out what that is, if you could share that, that'd be great. Because
oh yeah, I'll put a link in the chat. But just so everybody knows, I haven't actually used this product yet. It's a product that we're prospecting and that I'm very curious about. And if anybody else has used it, I would love to hear about that.
So yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we're looking at almost having a similar kind of grantee file access and then a separate internal kind of 2 places for file situation. So that was in theory, so glad to hear that it's actually working, in real world. Thank you.
Has anybody tried using any sort of external storage, whether it's SharePoint or Google Drive or anything, third-party tools that might already be scanning those files? But I think that's a great point, Samantha.
Yeah, so our internal file repository that's integrated with Salesforce is through Box. We've had our Box integration set up for so long. Now, some of our recent hires are like, well, we have files, the Salesforce feature of files. Why do we have this? And I'm like, files is relatively new. We had to do the Box integration because Salesforce didn't have the equivalent of being able to have these files that you could like do interesting things with. So that's part of why we have this technical debt of having both. But also it's useful that we have an internal area and a shared area. So we're making use of that while we continue to have both up and running.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just thinking, yeah, if a security app, you need to do the review or something like that, you may have the ability to connect to external storage that may have some of that virus protection in place. But it's a really good play. Another one of those attack vectors that you wouldn't initially think of, but it's one to keep in mind when you're setting up these portals and allowing people to send you stuff. All right, sorry, I'm reading the chat. Anybody else have any other questions or anything that we haven't hit yet?
There's an interesting question in the chat about handling grantee reports. And maybe other people, if you make grants with conditional payments, how you handle the verification and evidence for conditional grants. We do ours the same way that we do our proposal intakes. So we have a collection of experience builder pages for requirements, and then those have different numbers of tabs, and those tabs have router flows, and those flows are how we collect information. And all of the information leads back to like these custom objects for reports and conditions, and there's some automation for like we use approval processes and we have to release payments and all that stuff, but we're using a similar design pattern. It's just like multiplies the amount of work we have of dealing with version control of different kinds of flows.
Yeah, and I would say that's what a little bit of what our form assembly solution was trying to get at was like we needed some way for people to, we knew they were going to be sending us reports quarterly, not just like, a lot of grants just have a end of term report, not those quarterly ones, but we needed to make sure projects were moving on schedule, they were staying within budget, and so all of this needed to happen on a quarterly cycle. So that was why we needed like a portal or a form or something to capture that. And then the one piece we're not far enough into, but the idea is that we'll be able to take and use roll-ups, from the financial data that they send quarterly, roll that up on like how much they've expended, or if they ask for advances, and we'll have like a running total, and then be able to kick that back up. So we're not going to be, again, form assembly, we're just asking for a grant ID. We're not asking for, lots of private information. So the exposure is low from a security standpoint, but our idea was we could be like, well, here's how much you were awarded, here's how much you've spent in these 7 budget categories that we've agreed on, and then this is where your budget's going to stand. And so again, just kind of pulling that data out of Salesforce at a summary level and letting them continue to do that. But so again, whatever the form tool, you can do some really cool stuff if you have a kind of a regular process, whether it's a screen flow or just another form tool, or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, Nick, before do you want to share the one tip that we
I
talked
had a
about?
question actually for the group. Is anyone using the Outbound Funds template that comes out of the box, or you can get from the installer tool, the Salesforce installer tool?
Or does anybody know that it exists?
It's an Experience Cloud template. It's not just like a template for anything.
Yes.
So it comes with all, it's really, really, really cool. I encourage people should use it if you can.
Yeah, so yeah, well, I think we'll kind of quick do the plug here to that. Just like how you can install Outbound Funds into your org through the Salesforce.org installer, there's a installer for they call it the kind of the Outbound Funds starter portal template. And so, it's kind of a Experience Cloud setup, as Samantha was just saying there. The one thing we did notice is that the link on the website goes to for documentation goes to a Power of Us hub link, which no longer exists. And so what Bill has up here is the link to the doc, but I'll put in the chat too of kind of the steps once it's installed, how to get it enabled in your org from there, if that's something you want to play around with as well.
Yeah, so start with that. Layer in Samantha's screen flows. Get Fiona's data model for metadata.
There are definitely people who use like all of the above too. Like
Yeah.
there are people I know who use form assembly embedded in an Experience Cloud site or not embedded in an Experience Cloud site. Like I can think of one foundation where they send pre-fill form links to everyone in their report reminder, and it takes you right to your report that you have, your report form that you need to fill out. So there's just so many different ways to handle all of this. And anyone here thinks they want to go the screen flow route and are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I would just say you can start small and you can make a screen flow where people literally just answer one question. And we have tabs like that. And then from there, if someone is like, oh, but can it be this other question some of the time? Can it be this other question for only these type of grants? You just keep trying to fix more outliers, and then eventually you get to what we have, where we're a pretty well-resourced foundation and we have a technical team. But I really think that a lot of people could learn how to set up your Experience Cloud site with flows or other form builders in a relatively DIY way. Relatively. And if you need help, you can always ask the community.
Wow. I think your tip though about start with like the 80% use case, right? Like what's 80% of people are just coming there to fill out like the same 5, 10 fields, whatever it is. Maybe it is that one question. Start there and then just slowly expand. I would say that's just about every solution we, get that MVP that gets the 80% use case covered. I just saw Kimberly just chatted in. Anyone using Flow Toolkit with flows? I don't know, Kimberly, if you want to, sorry, it just moved on me, but I don't know if anybody wanted to jump off and answer that or reply in the chat.
I can talk about it if anybody
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
curious. So I can't explain what the tool is. However, what it does is it offers a kind of front-end user interface that lets you build based off a specific object. So if you're like, oh, I want to build a form to capture account data, or I want to build a form to capture like opportunity data or individual applications or grantee reports or requirements, you can, it's essentially you're picking and choosing what fields you want to display on the form, and then it inherits automatically like field level permissions and security based on the end user who's accessing it. And on the flow itself, you just have to put the component in the flow. And even the update piece of it, it just says, oh, based on this component, do you just want to update every field, or do you want to update all fields? Or only change fields. And so therefore it makes it a little bit easier to manage, because you have a get statement that just gets the variables. You put the flow component on the page, and then you just say, yep, we're going to update, like an update component, everything that was just modified in the last screen. And they do offer a automatic PDF generator as well. So they have this like dynamic flow. I'm butchering this because I don't know the terminology, and I feel really bad because you just like walk me through all of this. But there's like a way to dynamically generate it using, I think they call it flow submission. And so that's their framework for how the objects work together. And because I walk through a lot of the grant making scenarios that we usually have, and there was this really complicated one where we use the standard application framework in grant making. I know this is not a grant making group, but like, because we try to use that and realize that for that client, it was incredibly complicated. So I was like, oh, how do I replicate it with this tool? And I was talking with the developer and the guy who created it, and he's like, oh, you can try this, and it will essentially just automatically render it anytime you make a change, like anytime an admin makes a change on the front end. So there is a cost to it. I think it's like $1,800 for larger foundations. If you're P10, you might be able to get away with $360 a year. So just something I was curious if anybody's come across it, used it, touched it, play with it.
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. Has anybody, I didn't see any comments in the chat, but does anybody want to come off mute if you've used it? Shout out and let us know.
I know a lot of people like it, and I know Bobby a little bit, who's the main, I think, engineer.
Yeah, he's great.
And I think it could be a really good way to lower the barrier of entry to making screen flow based, more complex screen flow based experiences. Yeah, people should check it out. We don't use it. It didn't exist yet when we did our big rebuild, but it's definitely cool.
Yeah. All right, Samantha, so you already answered a little bit of the next one, but the question was about if you have an open application, how do you prevent duplication? There, duplicate contacts, duplicate accounts, and I saw Samantha said she's matching based on EIN. we have some flows that run on the back end of Salesforce that we match based on the email domain. So we're like associating people with their domain. And so we know, again, they can't really do anything, can't really fake their email domain when they're filling those things in unless they just totally, pretending to be the wrong person from that org. But so we do some domain matching to cut down on duplicates. But yeah, what does other people do? Does anybody use anything else? I'd say EIN, if you're just a US grant maker, is probably a very easy thing if you're only granting to nonprofits, things like that. I'd say students and scholarships. I know we have that as a teaser for the closeout here, but capturing students with all the different email addresses, personal school, college, high school addresses, really can be a tough one to wrangle.
We are really struggling with this when it comes to how we handle fiscally sponsored projects because we have multiple people collaborate on each application. And so we need, for self-registration, we sometimes have people register from the fiscal sponsor. And then we also have people who are from what we call the project lead, who are the people doing the work, who are generally from a smaller or more informal organization and might not have an EIN. And so they need something to register under. And in some cases, we just affiliate them with their fiscal sponsor, or people change fiscal sponsors. And in other cases, we create an org record for this entity, but then we can't match against it. And we're going to design a new self-registration process flow. I don't know yet. That I think is going to just be much more like, what are you trying to register as? And then like, we're going to help you do that, because right now it's one size fits all. And we're really having trouble with, like I said, the fiscally sponsored projects. For the vast majority of orgs, definitely 80% are not fiscally sponsored, and the EIN works, but we had to do some fancy footwork at some point because sometimes people put in the dash and sometimes people don't. And we need to have an exact match. And so I think that we have a flow that reformats the number to make sure that we have a dash included.
Yeah, that's a good one. And if anybody missed, we had some stuff about looking up orgs on a previous call about using like Candid and GuideStar and some other tools, or even just formula fields for generating some of those fields. So great one to end on. So I teased we have like 1 minute left for today. So again, want to thank everybody for coming and joining us today. We'll keep you guys all updated on the upcoming events. Let me share my screen so y'all have that. And we'll continue to post out in the community so everybody can keep track of what's coming. So we're looking for speakers right now. We're either going to be talking about scholarships or applications. And so those are the two topics that we're looking for landing on, but it'll be July 14th. And so also, if you have any ideas for other things that you would like to discuss, our group's open, and we're looking for ideas, and we'll be taking those. And so I would say just shoot any of us, find us wherever you found this announcement, whether if it was tag, hit me up on Slack. If it was in the Salesforce communities, hit one of our team members up there, or join us in the Outbound Funds community, Trailblazer community. It's usually the best place to find us. So, but we look forward to working with all of you and bringing more of these topics for everybody to learn from. So thank you again. Have a great day. And thank you to our wonderful speakers.